doing my top 10, I was a bit frustrated with college football in general. And the reason is that the top 5 were really easy to locate. And then behind that, I started thinking to myself, like, oh, well, this team's no good and that team's no good. Should they really be in the top 10? Oh, I don't know. It was really difficult after the top 5. And I was frustrated with myself that I was minimizing these teams outside of the top 5 in the country. And I was looking for reasons why they were not good rather than reasons why they were playing well. And it got me really thinking more about the college football playoff. Folks, you can make a strong argument that the college football playoff has weakened our ability to be great fans of the sport in general. Think about it, right? I mean, you've got Ohio State, Clemson, you've got Alabama and Oklahoma, who have accounted for 17 college football playoff appearances. 17. The rest of the country combined has appeared in the playoff 7 times. That's unreal dominance at the top of college football. But that dominance, I don't know if it's good for the sport. Is the college football playoff hurting college football? I think that it is. I think that it is. But let's try to avoid it. Let me walk through how we can try to avoid it. First and foremost, you got to understand how it's maybe hurting the sport. Number one, I think when you look at the college football playoff, you can argue that it has further divided the haves and the have-nots, right? Because 5-star recruits and top-end 4-star recruits look at the teams that are going to the playoff, and that's where they want to go play. Then guess what happens? Those teams go back to the playoff. And then top 4-star and 5-star players, where do they want to go? To those places. And so it's a perpetuating cycle that those teams get the same recruits, and then they continue to play dominant football. And we're going to see that time and time and time again. So it's going to be very hard to change this and increase the level of parity throughout the sport. Number two, you can argue that it's made commentary really lazy. And sometimes I fall into this, and shame on me for it. But my industry immediately makes things black and white. This conference is trash. This team is trash. This team is great. And we go hyperbolic in order to get you to click on what we're doing. Try to avoid that. Number three, I think it minimizes the excellence at the top. What Alabama and Clemson are doing is historically good. We've never seen a run of success like Alabama is having under Nick Saban. Never. They've been number one in the country at some point in every season for 12 seasons. That's astounding, and I think that we should evaluate it as such. And then lastly, I think it turns a blind eye to some of the quality accomplishments that are going on outside of the college football playoff. Let me give you a couple of examples. Okay, what Miami is trying to do and trying to build under Manny Diaz is pretty tough to do. And you might think to yourself, like, well, they've got a great history. Yes, but in modern vintage, Miami's only won 10 games or more one time since joining the ACC. You might think to yourself, really? Yes. Yes, all of those great 10-win teams and the Miami of old were either independents or they were in the Big East. Ever since joining the ACC, they've only had one double-digit win season. So what they're trying to build right now is very difficult to do. So while they're getting better, let's caution ourselves about evaluating them just against Clemson right now, because what Clemson is doing is historically good across the history of college football. Notre Dame is another great example. They are on a run of success right now that rivals any other run of success throughout their program's history. You might bristle at that if you're an Irish fan, and I understand, right? They haven't won the national championship, and that's certainly something that you would strive for at Notre Dame as being one of the blue bloods of the sport. But did you know that if Notre Dame could win 10 games this year, which might be difficult with the pandemic, but if they won double-digit games this season, it would be the 4th straight season that they won 10 or more games. Now, you might think to yourself, that's really good, but we've seen Alabama do it. We've seen Ohio State do it, Texas under Mac Brown. Like, teams do this all the time. Not at Notre Dame. Not at Notre Dame. They've never in their history won 10 or more games in 4 consecutive seasons. So what Brian Kelly is doing currently at Notre Dame should be valued because it's really good. And I would argue it's way better than what they were before Brian Kelly got there. They're playing at the top end of college football, even if that top end is not quite at the Alabama, Clemson college football playoff standard. So there's 3 things that we need to do as fans, I think, all of us collectively, to become better fans and to enjoy the sport and celebrate the sport more. Okay, here's the 3 things. 1, know your program. Folks, You can never get to a destination unless you know who you are. All right. So you got to know your program, know its history. When were they at their best? And what are they at their average? What's your natural recruiting base? What should the expectations be around recruiting? All of these things are very, very important in order to do number two. So if number one is know your program, then the second thing you need to do is set realistic expectations year in and year out. All right. And now those are going to change based on what's happening in number one. But I really believe that if you define your program accurately in number one, then you can reach a set of realistic expectations in number two. All of us should strive to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Listen, I'd love to beat Usain Bolt in a sprint, right? I'd love to win a gold medal and be the fastest man on the face of the planet. Ain't in the cards for me. Just ain't, right? So that should not be my goal, but that doesn't mean I can't be excellent at something else. All right. And it doesn't always mean that I can reach the specific goal that I want to reach. It does mean that I can be great at something else. When we try to be something that we're not, I think that there are problems, and those problems have been, I think, very easy to see throughout college football. I would say that Nebraska lost its way for a while, and they're still trying to find their way back. All right. So number one is know your program. Number two is define realistic success. And then number three, and I think this is really the most important, is don't overreact as a fan. All right. It's not always black and white. And as is the case in most area of our lives right now, our attention is sought. All right. Our attention is sought after by hyperbole and clickbait. Don't fall for it. All right. Don't fall for it, because right now the playoff standard is not the only standard that you can match your program against. I think it robs people of their college football joy. Don't let it rob you of your college football joy. Now, should that be the standard? Should that be the goal? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But know where you are on that route towards that destination and understand it realistically. All right, because this sport is way too good for all of us to fall trap to the hyperbole and black and white analysis that goes on in the clickbait world. We are better than that, and you are better than that. So let's celebrate college football accordingly.
For the best access, perspective, and personalities in all of sports, follow us at Fox Sports on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here. College football on Fox.